Welcome into another edition Inside Carolina's On the Beat, sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt, JohnnyT-Shirt.com. I am Tommy Ashley, but the men of the hour, as you can see on the screen, Jeremiah Holloway, Adam Smith, and Evan Rogers. I'm going to switch it up, though, Adam, because I got to get Jeremiah at the top so we can see the Congruity ad, our other sponsor, there in the
Oh,
top right.
clever TA.
So where are you? Are you pointing to
It's my little office Christmas tree.
Jeremiah, Adam, Evan? Folks, we're here. We're going to do the new format again. We did it last week. We thought it was pretty good. But now I've narrowed it down. Last week, I gave these guys the first 9 games of the basketball season to try to come up with a quote, a moment, and a story. This time, we're going to do it without any games to talk about because Carolina has been off all weekend. But interesting press conferences. Jeremiah, I'll come to you first. And you can start anywhere you want here. Had football availability, with players getting ready for the Duke's Mayo Bowl. Had Hubert Davis earlier. Where do you want to go? Give me your favorite quote of the past week and the most relevant quote, maybe, of the past week.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess I'm going to take one from obviously our, football availability, and I'm actually going to go with one that was in my story. This was about I wrote about Cedric Gray and him not being there for the first time and obviously a long time. He played every game of his UNC career, and this will be the first time since 20. Well, technically, first time since 2019 that he wasn't on the field because he obviously wasn't yet with the team. So I asked Kamen Rucker, what's it been like not having Cedric Gray around? Because he's obviously been such a vocal presence, essentially the voice of the UNC defense. So the first thing he said was, "I love him, but it's not as loud." So obviously, that feeds into the vocal element. Then he continued to say, when he's out here, he's very vocal. He's a very emotional leader. He definitely has his way of making his presence known out there at practice. From my perspective, and Adam, I guess, kind of being a vet as well, might agree with this, but I kind of feel like sometimes, like when we talk to these guys and these availabilities, we can kind of tell who the leaders of the team are just based on, sometimes who they bring out there, and then even when they bring them out there, what they say. And Cedric Gray, and obviously his teammates back up the fact that he is, a leader, but you can kind of tell, just like Drake May, and I would throw Corey Gaynor in there, were kind of like the voices of that offense, and it translated on the field. That's what Cedric Gray was for UNC. And so it's going to be interesting. One thing I think is the most interesting, I think there are two things that are very interesting, and obviously they're going to be relevant to two individual players. How does Power Eccles do in his first game without Cedric Gray? What does it look like? Obviously, he switched over to that other position that Ced had. And he said, there's not a ton of technical differences, but how is he going to be kind of being the lead guy? And then also, this is the first time we're going to get some extended run to see what Amari Campbell can do, because Amari Campbell is somebody that Cedric Gray really has kind of crowned in a way. He's basically has said in the past that Amari Campbell has next, sort of thing, and that he can kind of carry the torch forward. This is going to be the first time that we really see him playing a full game. How does he do in a full game? He's definitely made some plays when he's been out there, but how is he going to fare being one of the chief guys? And so that's the reason I picked the Kamen Rucker quote, just kind of, what's lost, in the void of not having Cedric Gray any longer, but then also the bigger context of what does that defense look like without him in the middle of that defense.
Get in here, Adam.
Well, yeah, it's the comments from Jeremiah. It just made me think. I was thinking this yesterday, and the Kamen Rucker quote's a great one about it being quieter. That's probably very accurate, I'm sure. But like, I don't know if there's an answer to this. Why would you move Power Eccles? Like, why not just keep him in the same spot that he's played for 2 years, and then move Amari Campbell up to the Cedric Gray, the weak side linebacker? I guess they obviously know better than I do, but I thought that was strange because we have heard this season that, Cedric really has tried to take Amari Campbell under his wing and sort of, train him at that spot. I know Cedric never comes off the field, but you know, and I know when Amari got in some, it was alongside Ced, so he would play the Mike linebacker. Cedric obviously better side to side and roaming than Power is. Power is kind of more of a straight ahead sort of, bulldozer, hit you straight on. But I don't know. I just thought, there we go. Carolina 93. Look at that, the chat. George Jenkins has been on fire in the chat, by the way. I see you, George. Octavius Barnes, Shohei, John Rahm. Good God, man.
We got a lot to talk about today.
He's been in the nog.
I know. Send it, George. Send what you're doing. Whatever you got. We got 4 people here. There's enough to go around.
Go read Jeremiah's story that he was very politely pumping there. Like it's interesting too, just to think about the aspect of Cedric Gray not being around. But I don't know. I really appreciate Power Eccles telling us the dynamic of that yesterday, and also saying, by the way, Michael Short and Caleb Lavallee are like the dudes who are backing them up now at linebacker. So you got Power Eccles and then a bunch of true freshmen, which I appreciate Power for. That was cool that he told us that. But I don't know. I just thought that was weird. Why not just keep Power where he's a pretty good player and have Amari Campbell sort of roam on the weak side? Anyway, I'll shut up. Evan can go next because I got first dibs last week. He can get second in line for quote of the week or whatever he's got over there.
I do think that's a great point, though, Adam, about, it's kind of like I'm driving, right? I'm driving and you're sitting in the passenger seat. And Evan and Jeremiah are in the back.
Where the kids should be.
Yeah. where the youngins are. And then I leave. Maybe the thought process is rather than let one of the young guys jump up in my seat and drive, they just slide you over because you've been riding in the front seat forever. I don't know. You would think.
That was a great analogy.
It wasn't. The key words were
like
the key words that you said there, though, is something to watch. Is maybe they know more than I do.
Right. I mean, obviously.
We shall see. We shall see.
It just sort of surprised me when our ears perk up from time to time, and then I was like, okay. So Power, not only does Amari Campbell have to learn to play 80 snaps a game or whatever he's going to do, Power Eccles also has to sort of play a new position, sort of. Anyway, I'll shut up.
To be frank, nothing surprises me. Go ahead, Evan.
Yeah, I kind of went the basketball route. I wasn't there today. I had some finals to get taken care of, but I was going back and looking back from the videos today, and I actually copied an idea that I didn't realize Adam had wrote a whole story about until I was reading a little bit before today. But I like what Hubert talked about with Cormac Ryan and kind of working through the kinks of Cormac and the shooting slump he's in, because the numbers kind of speak for themselves. And kind of Hubert talking about how there's nothing from a structural standpoint that he sees is off, and the idea that Cormac, it's impossible to be in the gym more than Cormac, and just how Hubert always believes that these percentages are going to even out. And I don't know if that's going to be the case for Cormac or not, but I think it's just an interesting talking point during this break that, as Adam mentioned in his article, since Cormac had the double ankle whammy, I think he's 4 of 19 from 3.
You got it.
And, he's had this week plus off, and to maybe get fully healthy, maybe there was something with his just base and shooting it differently. I know people talk about how he shoots it quick. Maybe he was shooting it quicker because he felt like he wasn't getting the lift that he normally had. So I think not necessarily the Kentucky game in itself, but I think this next stretch of maybe 4 to 5 games, if you kind of take in its own season almost in a way, if you look at his percentages over these next 4 to 5 games, I think those are going to be pretty telling about what you're probably going to get from Cormac for the remainder of the year. And one thing I think that's been kind of common across everyone who watches them is they're good looks, and it looks good when he comes out of his hand. He has a good shot. And I've always been kind of, I don't know, this is a stupid thing I always believe in, but I believe that all shooters always shoot the ball. It looks good. RJ Davis, it looks good when it comes out of his hand from a forms aspect and just from a release point. In contrast, for example, I'm not trying to pick on one guy, but if you watched Pete Nance shoot the ball last year, it wasn't the greatest form in the world. It didn't look good when it came out of his hands. Or even an example on this roster, when Armando shoots the ball in a jump shot form, it doesn't look good. Or when Harrison shoots the ball, it looks good from a form, from a mechanic standpoint. So I think Cormac has those things going for him. And I think over these next 4 or 5 games, you're really going to see, is this just a slump that he's going to be able to get out of? Or is this going to be kind of the Cormac Ryan you're going to get for the whole season?
So you guys have brought up what's going to be our debate later. And I'm going to give you a heads up on the debate. The title of this is What Can Carolina Accomplish? So over these next 2 games, or next 3 games before they go to the new year, and Adam, I want your quote, but this is the debate topic y'all can be thinking about in the back of your head. Cormac Ryan getting on track, winning the 2 games, getting back to play in the depth. Those are going to be our 3 debate topics for the next 3 games for North Carolina. And I think they're very different, but they all run together as well. So be thinking about that. Adam, a quote.
Well, just to piggyback off of Evan, great stuff from Evan there, by the way, and Jeremiah, obviously. But when Evan was saying, I don't know if this strikes you any sort of way, TA, but when Evan was talking about, a shooter, it just looks good a lot of times coming off his hand. To show my age a little bit here, Chris Mullen. Man, I used to think every one of those things was going in when Chris Mullen shot it. I mean, that, go back and look from 8 to 10 years before you guys were born. But when he was wearing number 17 for the Golden State Warriors, good God Almighty.
That was my guy in 2K with the old school Warriors
Absolutely.
team. Yeah. Really? I love playing with Chris Mullen. Oh, yeah.
I remember him at St. John, so I'm going to date myself even further. Go back and watch like the 84.
Used to coach there, right?
84. Yeah, he actually did.
When he was there.
But this was when he played in 84, 85, when the Big East was just nasty. Old school Big East basketball. He was one of those guys. Adam, on your quote, I heard a few. I heard a few this week listening to the thing. It was funny for me listening to Hubert. How many times did he say rebounding? Simple. And he's 100% right. This team's got to rebound.
You know what we should have done? Yeah, I was joking to Jeremiah. Roy used to do the thing where he'd take the rims off the backboards. Like he would get mad that they hadn't defended or rebounded by his estimation. And his teams always led the ACC in rebounding, led the country in rebounding. But, he'd have those moments where he would just screw the rims off the backboards and they would practice with no rims, It's kind of like my high school coach. He had this thing that he thought was cool. If you guys want me to rip my high school coach, I will. Where he would kick us out of practice once a season. He very much idolized Bobby Knight. And it got to a point where, some of us on varsity for a couple of years where, like, you knew it was coming. It was ridiculous. It was so contrived. Anyway.
I'll be like, kick me out of practice. You mean we don't have practice today? I'm devastated.
That's what everybody, that's what, the real, badass dudes would be like, I'm going home. But the whole thing was, it was such a charade. The whole thing was the captains were supposed to go find him in his office and ask him if we could come back to practice because we want to practice. It sucked, man. But
times have changed.
But this is the 90s. And Bobby Knight hadn't choked anybody by that point. But anyway, Gene, I mean, he threw a lot. I see Gene Triplehorn asking if he threw a chair. That guy. Anyway, my quote, guys. I'm glad we had the football availability. It was nice to get over there and talk to the players. I feel like we hadn't talked to them in a long time. But I'm going with one of my favorite quotes on this football team is J.J. Jones. I don't know if you're watching, if you're a UNC fan, if you're one of our loyal audience, you probably watched J.J. Jones. He's running those deep posts. Drake's hitting him 50 yards down the field. With us dealing with him, he's a fantastic quote. He's insightful. He's smart. He's funny. He's just a good dude to be around. He's always, you can ask him stuff and he won't bite your head off. But this was at the end. You guys go over to our YouTube page, watch the videos from yesterday that intern Jalen took. And at the end of the J.J. Jones interview, he was saying, I'm going to read from it. I had asked him about waiting to get their bowl assignment because it took so long with FSU getting snubbed. But he was saying, we're grateful for Duke's Mayo for letting us come to play in Charlotte. We're excited we get to play in the Mayo Bowl. Then someone said, well, how about Mack possibly getting, a Mayo bath? What would you be for that? He's like, oh, yeah, I would love to see Coach Brown take a Mayo bath. I hate mayonnaise, is what he said. So then he sort of watch it on the video. He sort of has this moment of clarity. I don't know if he was prompted either. He sort of has this moment of clarity, like, might not have should have said that. And then he looks straight in the cameras. You know, the cameras are all lined up, and he goes, "I'm kidding. I love mayonnaise. I love Duke's mayonnaise." And then he flashes this, like, you know, winning smile, like almost like, hold it, we got it. You know, like cut, print, there we go. But you know, he's like, "I hate mayonnaise. I love mayonnaise. I'm kidding." You know, like
it is an acquired taste for sure.
Yeah. You know, it seems like quite a few guys we talked to yesterday weren't big mayonnaise fans. I don't believe Rucker was a big Mayo fan.
I love some mayonnaise. I don't know about Duke's. I grew up not liking Duke's, but they pay the bills for this bowl game. So we all like Duke's mayonnaise.
I do like Duke's mayonnaise. I hate to be that guy.
Would you take a bath in it?
I don't dislike much. I wouldn't like to take a bath in it, but that was great. That was a great moment from JJ, punctuated by the smile, like he looked straight in the cameras. You know, so it was pretty cool. I thought that was fun.
One thing this team does have, and I guess probably all college teams have, is personable dudes that are that could clearly, as the NCAA likes to say, go pro in something else besides the sport. And I think JJ is one of those guys that's got the chops to do this. I mean,
yeah, he wants to be a person in the media, and you could tell that he definitely has that skill set to where, you know, great looking dude too, doesn't hurt, you know, to be on camera. So you might see him down the road on ACC Network or something like that one day.
It would be interesting to watch. All right, I'm gonna talk about Johnny T-shirt right fast because we're gonna get into. We can do moments and stories since we didn't have any real games to talk about. So I'm going to combine moment and stories for you guys for this week. But I'm going to talk about Johnny T-shirt. Look, I'm on Johnny T-shirt's website right now. Today they had cold weather gear as their 12 days of Christmas sale. And boys, it was cold out there today. I am not a cold person. So anything below 50 degrees, I'm bundling up like I'm going to the Arctic. Johnny T-shirt's got you taken care of with all the cold weather gear. It's always a great time to shop at Johnny T-shirt. The Christmas sales are wonderful. Hit them up. They can literally put everything under your tree you need for your Carolina person, but you always get 10% off on Inside Carolina Premium subscribers. So take care of them at Johnny T-shirt. Go see them on Franklin Street. You're pushing it at December 14th with Christmas 11 days away. I'm not sure about getting things mailed out at this point, but if you want to make it, go in person. Experience Johnny T-shirt. It's definitely worth it. National guys will pay the bills. Will be right back. It's On the Beat. What can Carolina accomplish? All right, Jeremiah, I'm going to give you first dibs too, just mainly because you're sitting beside me on the screen there. Give me a moment or a story from this past week that only somebody on the Inside North Carolina beat could have.
Yeah, so we got to talk to Connor Harrell the other day, and after we got done talking to him, you know, sometimes you just like to make conversation with guys. So I told him, so obviously Connor Harrell, he's got locks like I do. So I was actually asking him about that because I actually remember me and Andrew Jones, there was one game. I think it was the Campbell game. It was like before the warm-ups, and we just noticed his hair like had got like super long. Like we were like, yo, this dude, like, and obviously, you know, I had seen him in the summer at, you know, one or two things, and then I see him at the Campbell game, and obviously the helmet's off and like his locks are just like long. So after he gets done talking, I just go over to him, man. I'm like, yo, like you growing them out, man. And sometimes I just like to do that, just to kind of make conversation with people with long hair. He was like, yeah, man. So I was like, how long has it been? He's like, yeah, it's probably been like 3 or 4 years. And he was like, I don't know, maybe I'm thinking about cutting him. I'm like, bro, you got to just let him ride how long as they go. Cause that's kind of, you know, that's kind of what I do. I'm 7 years deep into this. So I just, you know, you just kind of let them grow out.
7 years deep.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it was my junior year of high school. So it was like September 2016. So I just been growing them out since then. Yeah,
Adam,
man.
We don't know anything about it.
I mean,
I'd have like one piece of hair right here that would be like 10 feet long.
The discipline is awesome. I was eating tater tots. The discipline is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, you just gotta, because I mean, like when I was younger, like you kind of had to, keep the low cut type deal. So like I got to the point I was old enough, and I was like, you know what, like if I take care of them. So matter of fact, my mom actually, when I guess it was like not even a year into it, because I was like, she was like, hey, like at some point, like you're gonna be going to college, like I can't keep like twisting your hair or whatever. You gotta make a decision. So I just kind of was like, all right, so I'm gonna just let him grow out. But a lot of the reason I bring up the Connor thing is because he's especially relevant now. Like, you're going into this bowl game where you're going to be the starting quarterback, and we asked some stuff about that. Obviously, Max Johnson comes in, and we would ask him about, hey, is that something that they communicate? And he said, yeah, it is, and everything like that. So it's going to be very interesting to see. And we also got to see, like, some of his personality after we, kind of got done chatting with him, and just kind of, obviously on the podium or like, on camera, he talked about, a lot of his stuff, a lot of his routine. But even off podium, we asked him a little bit about, like, I think maybe like his major and just different things like that. He's got, Travis Green on his playlist and all that. So we got to kind of get some insight into his personality a little bit. We got to know Drake obviously last couple of years, and now we have Connor Harrell, who didn't talk to as much, but got to learn a little bit more about him the other day.
That's the cool thing about this is, and I don't do it near as much as you guys do now, but getting to know the guys away from the face that people see on the screen, and because a lot of times some guys are the exact same. When you talk to them in whatever, in front of everybody versus off to the side or anything like that. Other guys open up more, and you usually see the young guys that haven't really been in front of the camera a ton. You can really get more from them, and that's what. And this is, I'm gonna be the old guy yelling at clouds. Like during COVID, and Adam, you know about this, and you guys know about this. Evan, you might not. You weren't doing this yet, but during COVID, when you had to interview guys on Zoom, you just can't get the same deal as when you're standing here talking to, like, this is not the same as if we were sitting around talking. Like, remember when the three of us were sitting on the bench behind the Dean Dome? It's just a different conversation, and that's the same way. So it's cool for you guys to relay stories like that so that our listeners and our watchers can realize, A, they're pretty good athletes, but they're also 99.9% of them are really great young men. Yeah. And I think that's important to highlight, because I think that's lost, especially when you got people banging on people for opting out of bowl games or, going to different schools and all that stuff. 99% of these kids are all the same. They just wear a different color jersey, whether it's red or dark blue or Carolina blue or whatever. And it's pretty interesting to get to know them. Anyway, off my soapbox. Evan.
Well, also on that, TA, on that, like, think about, I always thought about it our way, but also the other way. What if you were a player, like, that the first time you met the media? Connor Harrell sort of met the media yesterday when we were over there. The first time you're meeting the media is on Zoom, where you're just in like some room and you're looking at some screen. You know what I mean? Like, I think Cedric Gray, possibly the first time we ever talked to him on the UNC beat was over Zoom. Yeah. When he start getting in the lineup alongside Jeremiah Gemmel a couple of years ago. And I just think about that. If you're the player and you got to sit down and stare into this box, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, as opposed to having a conversation like Jeremiah's talking to Connor Harrell about his hair. Like, that's just one of those organic things that it's great. It's obviously great to be there in person for 10,000 reasons.
Sure.
Yeah. And what you say about the organicness of it. And, it's interesting when they, like when we met the transfers, and I'll even go to this, when we met the transfers back in January, and you walk up to a guy like Elijah Huzzy, I mean, he'd been at East Tennessee State, and I can't imagine they have close to the media. Now, maybe they do, but I walked up to him, the first person to talk to him for Carolina, and he's like, this is all new to me. And it's interesting to see how those guys grow through that, whether you're an 18-year-old freshman coming in and getting thrown to it, or you're a transfer from a smaller school having to deal with it. Granted, it's different with recruiting and all that, but it's just fascinating to watch that sort of aspect of it and the humanization of them. And George, again, in the chat, and I say this, I mean, I'll commit a crime right here saying one of the coolest people I ever talked to back when I covered back in the day was Elton Brand for Duke. That dude was awesome. And, I said, I'm going to the Duke locker room. And we kind of had them both covered at ACC tournament. And I just sat down and talked to Elton Brand. Not only was he a beast on the basketball court, he was just a chill dude. And he knew I worked for Inside Carolina. He didn't care. We just sat there and talked. And so that's the interesting aspect of it from it. Anyway, old man yelling at clouds. They're all just young people. Evan, you're up. Story, quote. No, you've already done quote. Story, anecdote, moment. However you want to do it.
Yeah, this one's also from football. One of the cool things that we had and the availability for that one is it was in the practice facility. Sometimes we have them in the Keenan Football Center, which is attached to Keenan Stadium. Obviously, it's kind of like the lobby area at the bottom. But on this one, we were actually kind of in the back corner of the Keenan Football Center, and you can kind of look around. Obviously, practice is over by this point, by the time we're starting to talk to some guys. But there are plenty of guys that kind of stick around after practice and do extra this or that and just reps or anything. And I think one of the cool things was off to the side, Kamon Rucker was working with Jaybron Harvey for probably 45 minutes. I mean, Kamon was the last guy we spoke to after Power, JJ, and Connor. And that whole time, Kamon was working with Jaybron Harvey outside on kind of like the grass field they have next to the indoor facility. And Jaybron is a freshman. Jack came on same position, or at least I guess came on played Jack last year. Or no, he played it this year. Sorry.
Yep.
And as Adam might know, Jaybron's a Mebane, North Carolina native, so I'm sure he is near and dear in that respect. But
Jaybron is a freak.
He's a huge kid. I mean, for a true freshman, you look at him, he's massive. I remember someone asked Kamon right when we got him, like, who are you working with? Is he up next? And it was kind of cool to hear Kamon say, like, we'll see. He's got a lot of work to do. I think that was a cool answer. Like, sometimes you'll get guys who kind of just gloss over it and be like, yeah, he's going to be great. But I think the fact that, Kamon, who you can kind of tell is like a mentor to him, is pretty upfront and candid about his opinions of where he is, I think is good for a player like that. And what was really cool was, so we talked to Kamon, and Kamon's the last guy we're talking to. And we're walking out of the Keenan Football Center, and Kamon's actually kind of walking out behind us. He got drove home by the Jeremy Sharp, the SID, in the golf cart. And as we're leaving, Kamon's giving kind of his parting words, advice to Jaybron. And as we're leaving, and this is probably 1:15, 1:20, I mean, almost an hour and a half after practice is over. And Jaybron is still out there just doing individual drills. And by this point in time, he's the last guy. I mean, there's no one else out there. There hasn't been someone there for probably half an hour. So that was really cool to look at and kind of see a kid that young who's highly rated. I mean, he came in as a very, very high 4-star. And, sometimes that's not always the case with some of those highly recruited guys that come into a place like UNC where maybe they are a little bit bigger of a fish when they get in as a freshman. So I thought that was a really cool moment to kind of see him out there. I mean, guys talk about staying late and getting up early, but it was really cool to kind of actually see that materialize in person.
I remember one day we walked out there. I guess it was in preseason. It was all of us out there, and we walked, and practice was over. They had the availability. They let us in, and it was, 120 on the turf? I mean, it was just brutal out there that day. Yep. And there were a bunch of them, a bunch of the guys out there running what I call suicides, whatever they call them, 33s, 22, whatever and I was like, yeah. But you can see the ones that are going to be good doing that versus the ones that head back to the locker room or whatever.
It's what Freddie Kitchens was letting them have it, Tommy. One of those days they let us, people that don't know, we sort of have to wait outside almost every time, like practice isn't open. And, the gate rolls, and it's like, like we're going to see the Wizard on the Wizard of Oz, So like true. One of those days they let us in, we're walking. I'm like, oh, my God, Freddie Kitchens is letting them, think about how good the tight end room is. Freddie Kitchens, he said at some point as we were walking past, I was like, God, I got to try to remember all this, You're like, yeah, it's hot. We're all hot, like.
It's just, hey, you get what you allow. That's my favorite quote. And Freddie don't allow any junk, and his room played that way. It's relevant. All right, where are we going? Is it debate time, guys? I tried to pull
I still
some.
got to do my anecdote, Tommy.
Oh, have you not gone? I mean, you're
I've been
always.
running my mouth, so I've probably taken up too much time if you want me to be quiet.
Give me a great story. No, look, somebody hit me up, and I did see it on the message boards later. Said Adam Smith's always got stories. There's nothing better for me to hear guys that have done this for a long time covering stuff, telling stories that most everybody won't notice or hear about unless you hear it from the person telling it. And Adam, you're up.
Okay, so what you're saying is
I want your story.
You want the two Chris Paul punches to the groin that I saw in person before he hit Julius Hodge. So,
Who did he punch before that?
Oh, dude, let's do a whole show seriously because there is no more polarizing. I think, there might be no more polarizing guy I've ever covered than Chris Paul because
Grayson Allen. Grayson Allen?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd say he's polarizing. Grayson Allen's of the same category because if you actually talk to Grayson Allen, he is like quiet and nice, but he's obviously a psycho,
Yeah. If you just talk to him away from the basketball court, he's a cool dude. I mean, he's an interesting fella. He's just
I
nuts.
covered the game in Greensboro when he tripped the Elon kid, Steven Santana, and it was one of the most surreal nights I've ever been. Being in that locker room, he was having a meltdown. He was crying uncontrollably. He was crying uncontrollably. He could not stop crying.
Yeah, it was bizarre.
And Matt Jones of Duke looked at me. They were about to go on a holiday break. It was like a couple of days before Christmas. They played this game at the Greensboro Coliseum. And Matt Jones looked at me. He's like, yeah, kind of time for a break. I almost started dying. But the Chris Paul stuff, we'll have to get to another night because I did see – this was when I was a young buck. I did cover a New Mexico Wake Forest game in Winston-Salem. And he did the same thing that he eventually did to Julius Hodge a couple months later. This was an early season game. Richie McKay, who's the coach at Liberty now, was the New Mexico coach. Freaking Danny Granger was playing at New Mexico. It's a good New Mexico team. It's a good Wake Forest team. And I saw they're doing a little underneath out of bounds. And this is when we used to sit close. Underneath out of bounds, a little, two guys on the box, two guys on the elbow, standard little thing. And I saw Chris Paul just rear back and punch New Mexico point guard. I believe his name was Dayon Merritt. You can look it up. Right in the family jewels. And this dude for New Mexico went nuts, which I don't blame him. He tried to kill Chris Paul. And I believe he got tossed. He at least got a technical. He may have gotten ejected. And then Chris was doing one of these like, what? So anyway, I'm like, who knows how, 25? I'm young. I covered this whole game. I asked Chris Paul about it, but he acted like he didn't know what happened. I asked Chris Paul, like, why did you hit the guy in the balls? So I go back to the newspaper office. I'm working in newspapers then. And I told everyone was older than me. I told them what happened. And like several of them didn't believe me. Like some of the reporters, like one guy was just like, the mayor of Winston-Salem, he would never do that. And I'm like, dude, Chris Paul is dirty, man. And he doesn't have to be because he's like a freaking great player. I mean, anyway, I could
that's what I'm talking about.
I could do an entire Chris Paul episode because also, I was there the day they retired his jersey. And he was like, you know what? My cell phone starts with 336 prefix and it always will because I'm 336. And I was like, God dang, Chris, that'll write. I can write that. That'll do. Thanks for laying that out there. But I'll shut up.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think he's good enough to walk on at Carolina?
Chris Paul.
For folks that don't know,
he has never let go of that, has he?
Go watch. Go do your Chris Paul recruiting research and understand who asked him to do that. Unbelievable.
It's interesting that Evan picked the moment with Kamen Rucker and Jaybron Harvey because I had sort of basically the same thing. But, there was a moment as we were talking to some of the guys earlier, because Kamen did work with Jaybron for a long time, where, and J.J. Jones pointed this out. He actually said this as we were talking to him. He pointed out there on the field after they had broken up practice was the new state of Carolina football, was what it occurred to me. You had Willie Lampkin, the new center, snapping to Connor Harrell, the new quarterback, and they were working with Deems May, who's now the first string tight end. So, like, it was a hell of a visual. You know, we're kind of doing some interviews over there in the corner. You look out there on the field, and there you got Lampkin, who has played guard this whole season, Connor, who has been behind Drake May for 2 years, and Deems May, who's been fourth on the depth chart. So that would be my sort of the same nugget type of thing you only see if you're there in person. And it's sort of, if you step back and think about it, it wasn't Corey Gaynor snapping to Drake May working with Bryson Nesbitt and John Copenhaver. Yeah. Some different dudes, some different sized dudes, and sort of where we are right now in December of 2023.
It is, like you said, a new era of Carolina football. It's portal era, and it's opt-out era. It is, you know, all sorts of crazy stuff. It's going to be interesting to see when Carolina gets on that field against West Virginia. You know, Carolina always seems to get those teams in the bowl games that have a point to prove. You know, they got South Carolina a couple years ago that South Carolina they didn't have anybody to play quarterback, but they were itching to beat Carolina's rear. And now you got West Virginia, who's overachieved this year.
Yeah.
Who, I don't know if people remember the 2008 bowl game, but those people travel. There were more students for West Virginia at that bowl game in 2008 than there were Carolina students there.
And how many times they play country roads?
Oh, it was like, I actually, you know, I knew the words by the end of that one. Even after a ton of, you know, big, nothing, I can't talk about that.
Refreshments.
Yes, it was a lot of refreshments in club level that day. But yeah, I mean, they're going to be ready to play. And to the point, and we sort of talked about this off the air, so let's make this one of our debate topics here. And Jeremiah, I want to get you in because we were talking about it before Adam joined us. Connor Harrell, QB1. He's waited his turn. He's getting this opportunity. He said that he wants to give the opportunity to show what he's got, you know, for everybody outside of Campbell. I mean, let's look. Campbell, love him, but it's not West Virginia, big-time football. But then he's also getting the questions, and rightfully so, about the Max Johnson deal. Where's the mindset? What's the debate here? Is it Connor Harrell? Is this Connor Harrell's job to sort of win for next season? Or is Max Johnson being brought in with the expectation of you've got an seasoned SEC quarterback, he's going to start? Do you think it's open, Jeremiah?
I don't think that it is as open as we may think, or as open as, how about this? I don't think that I think for Connor Harrell to get that job, it would take even more than a really good bowl performance, even like this month. The reason I say that is because, I mean, I saw somebody in the chat. They said something along the lines of, you know, this is like essentially Connor Harrell's, you know, kind of chance to prove that he's QB1 sort of thing. And Connor, to keep it all in perspective, hasn't had a ton of like in-game experience to start with. Obviously he had the Campbell game, but it's like brief moments, it was like one snap against Pitt when Drake had got out, the Campbell game, and then I can't really think of any other. I mean, you know, he's obviously been more consistent in practice throughout the year, but I think if you're UNC, and this is kind of what we were talking about before we got on here, you don't just go get 4-year SEC quarterbacks to just kind of hang out. Like, you know, there was a reason they went and got Max Johnson. I know that we were kind of wondering, you know, like, could they have waited longer to get maybe a bigger name, things like that. But this is a guy that played in the, you know, the vaulted SEC West, you know, against a lot of those defenses and a lot of those defensive lines. So he would have played Alabama multiple times. He played on LSU and Texas A&M, but he also would have played against both of those teams. So, yeah, I don't think they brought in Max Johnson necessarily to, you know, now I'm not saying that, you know, they're just going to hand him the job necessarily. Maybe they don't do that, but I think he has obviously the upper advantage. Like, you know, he's got more in-game experience, and you would have to think that the defenses he played in the SEC are going to be far superior to, the defenses that he would potentially see next year. Maybe not all, but probably most. So I think Connor Harrell, I don't know that I don't know that it's like a 50-50 right now. And I'm not at all implying that, Connor Harrell can't play quarterback, but I think they went and got Max Johnson for a reason. Like, I think there's a reason that they put their resources into, the transfer portals to go and essentially recruit Max Johnson to be, presumably their starter for next year.
It's going to be an interesting take. I mean, I don't know. I think, Adam, get in. I mean, what do you think here? Connor Harrell's got some pressure on him. I mean, a lot of North Carolina fans think this bowl game's meaningless. It's an exhibition. Carolina's going to get trucked, whatever. But for these individual players, specifically Connor Harrell, this game is huge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it is huge for Connor Harrell. I respectfully slightly disagree with Jeremiah. I think it's Max Johnson's job to lose. And I think Connor Harrell is going to have to hit a grand slam in the spring and the summer to win the job. I could be totally wrong. That's just my personal opinion. 6'6" Max Johnson, and God bless Connor Harrell. That dude is short. I mean, he can run, he can move around, but I don't think they're bringing in Max Johnson to sit him on the bench. Now, Connor Harrell could kick his butt in spring practice and in training camp in August and win the job. But I think that's what's going to have to happen. I think he's going to have to really go get it. Now, the advantage he has is this is his game. And what if he goes out there and just, it's magic. I don't know. It might be Mayo Bowl magic. Put it in the headline.
I mean, is it, and then you bring that up, is it pressure on him, or can he just play free? I think it's pressure.
I do too. I would hope the kid can play free, because think of how long he's been wanting this. If you don't know Connor Harrell's story too, valedictorian at his high school in Alabama, he won back-to-back state championships, and as a senior had a broken hand. And we were able to. I got him for a one-on-one, Heals for Life one-on-one after the Campbell game, and it's very interesting comments in there from Connor Harrell. He cut up a glove that he got on a UNC recruiting visit, like a receiver's glove. They give you the swag and everything, He cut it all up and made like his own splint on his dang right hand so he could play the Alabama State playoffs, the highest classification, with a broken hand. And they won. I do believe he was on a very good team, by the way.
They were stacked, but you still had to go out and win at the highest level.
Yeah, and he's got the background with Tua. I can't say Tua's last name, but Tua and his brother. It's cool. If you can find that Q&A, I could find the link for you. We can put it in the chat. It's some interesting insight. But I do think this might be like, if you queue up Eminem, this might be his one shot. I don't know. It's just my personal opinion.
It's I like Mayo Magic. I can see the headline now.
Mayo
Evan, where you want to take this? You want to get in on that debate, or you want me to give you another debate topic?
I'll keep it short with this one. I think this is a game that Connor can't win the job, I guess is what I'm going to say. This isn't a game where, even if he has this magic we're talking about, this is a job that if Connor is going to win this, it's going to have to be what is done in addition to what he does in the bowl game. So I don't think there is a way where you come out of this game and this coaching staff thinks that Connor is going to be the starting quarterback next year, I guess is how I'll keep that.
Yeah, just real quick to go off of that too. I think that this is a game that does a lot more for Connor Harrell personally than it does for Connor Harrell in his positioning to get the starting job, right? Because it's a game that it's just weird. It's just a funky game. Like, there's just really no kind of telling what would happen in a game like this. So he could go out there and obviously play great, but the real competition is going to start obviously in the spring and beyond. I think this would be good for him and his personal confidence to say, okay, I can play at this level. I can do good things as a starting quarterback in college, but it's the real competition to me is going to start spring and beyond.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of those things, and I used to tell my little league people when we coached them, we're not going to make any all-stars in little league, future all-stars, but we can make sure that there won't be any. And I think it's one of those situations in this game for him. I think he can certainly build his resume. I don't think, to y'all's point, he can win the game. He can win the job on the 27th. I think he could probably lose it, or at least put himself way down the list of it. And to y'all's point, Max Johnson coming in from Texas A&M and LSU and has played a ton of football. So it's going to be an interesting thing. That's why I want to see this game.
Yeah.
And that's why North Carolina fans, whether they go or not, should pay attention because, like it or not, come March, June, August, you're all going to be back in, and you're all going to be back in on the bandwagon, and you're going to want to pull for this team. And Connor Harrell and these guys that are going to get a ton of playing time are going to be relevant for the most part. We'll see how the portal shakes out and all that. But anyway, let's talk a little bit of basketball. And before I get to basketball, I won't let people know, if you're listening to the audio version of this, stay with us after this audio, after our show here concludes. We've got Greg Barnes and I did a Next Level podcast with Kentucky beat writer Ben Roberts of the Herald Leader. And I've said Herald Ledger 120 times talking to him. But the Herald Leader, he gives an insight to Kentucky that, quite frankly, we don't have. I mean, we can research it and write it and go all that, but he has covered that Kentucky beat, and he's covered the Kentucky recruiting beat for a long time. So listen to Greg and I on the audio version of this podcast. It's also on the YouTube version as a standalone, Next Level with Greg Barnes and Ben Roberts. And also Congruity. Congruity is our last sponsor. Going to name the last segment of this the Congruity segment. They're North Carolina-based HR, payroll, outsourcing for your small business, your local business. They take care of your people so you can grow your business. Customer service, technology, everything you possibly need if you're a small to mid-sized business owner. And the great thing about what they're doing with Inside Carolina is if you don't like if you can't smell what Congruity's cooking, you don't have to do anything. But you can go to congruityhr.com/Tar Heels and get a free assessment, and they can tell you what they can do for your business, and you can like it, leave it, flip it or flop it, but it's free. Go to congruityhr.com/Tar Heels. Take care of them. They take care of us, and they're great people. Darren and Matt and all those guys over there really take care of you. All right. What can Carolina accomplish here in the next 2 ball games, Kentucky, Oklahoma, but also Charleston Southern at the end of the year? I think Charleston Southern is probably a train wreck of a team right now. Probably not as bad as Louisville. Good God. Have y'all watched Louisville? I watched Louisville some last night. Don't ask me why. Arkansas State ran them, and Arkansas State's 3-7.
The list of non-conference teams that they've lost to the last 2 years is it ain't pretty.
And folks enjoy saying like Louisville stink, but it's not good. Somebody on the message boards put it up, and I don't keep up with the analytics, but the ACC is like 5th or 6th in conference ranking. Yeah. If they dumped Louisville today, they'd be like 3rd.
That's crazy, man. I mean, shout out to my guy Brooks Holton, who's at the Louisville Courier-Journal. So I kind of keep up with what's going on with that program, kind of through his coverage, man. And it's unbelievable. The stuff with Karan Davis the other day.
Oh, that's unbelievable.
If you guys saw that, I mean,
he was like, I didn't quit. I'm not transferring.
He announced he was going to transfer or something.
Yeah. They put out a release saying he's going to transfer, but apparently they were doing that to kind of protect him and say that so they could say that he wasn't. It was a lot. It was a lot.
I think the AD today was going around talking to the players, and I think they're thinking of doing something soon. I think that's
it is
what
just
I
an absolute train wreck. I mean, I remember them winning the national championship. What's the name? Broke his leg, his bones hanging out.
I covered the game. He broke his leg.
I mean, I saw that bone come out, and I was like, that's not good. And they win the national championship.
There were people throwing up.
That's another one of the stories. See, from being on the beach.
it was disgusting. I mean, that thing shook me to my core. And you know how steady and strong of a man I am. Like that was it happened right in front of me. And there were the Louisville bench got up and just ran. Like, you sort of run away from like something bad happening. They ran. And there were people throwing. Yeah. You say what you want to about Rick Pitino, but I will give the man credit. He kneeled down beside Kevin Ware. They covered his leg up and he stayed right there. And, his leg exploded.
Yeah. I've never seen anything. Well, I've seen like car wrecks and things like it and bad stuff, but never on a basketball court where your bone just comes flying out. And you were right there. That's Beat Stories by Adam Smith. I'm going to edit your book, Adam.
By the way, the chat has been on fire tonight. David Klein has got the best ears in the world. He rightfully so, always getting on me for my type loud. I don't know if it's an older man type thing.
It's just,
I hate to play favorites. George Jenkins has been amazing tonight. If a tree falls in Mayo, does anybody hear it? That's great. That is great.
Don and I always give a chat MVP. Maybe George Jenkins will get the chat MVP.
He's been in the nog tonight, and he's done a good job. And he did have a question about people being unwelcoming. I have a long list, George, but I will tell you off the top. Buzz Williams sucks. Buzz Williams, I mean, he sucks. He is a tremendous jerk. So you should not wish good things on Texas A&M basketball. He's terrible. He's awful. Unless you're Pete Thamel or Pat Forty or Gary Parrish or Seth Davis or some big national bigwig, then he's going to smooch your behind. But if you are covering Buzz Williams, like a ton of friends that covered him when he was at Virginia Tech, Buzz sucks.
And it's sweaty Buzz too.
Right.
This is awesome. I love the stories. We're going to have to do a story. We're going to have to do one of these shows and we just talk about whatever we want. I've been trying to wrap it back to Carolina.
I'm sorry. It's my fault.
No, it's not. I think I've been trying to wrap it back to Carolina to keep the powers to be happy. But I love talking about everything that is college sports or sports in general. But yeah, Buzz sucks. That'll be the quote from the show. I'll cut that for the CBS video. That is awesome. So let me ask my 3 questions, and I'm gonna let Jeremiah go first. Jeremiah's my guy. Win the 2 games. Get Cormac Ryan on track. Get back to playing the depth because they've really shortened the bench the last couple of weeks. 3 options. What's your number 1 option for the next 2 games for Carolina against Kentucky and Oklahoma? What's the most important out of those 3 in your opinion?
You're saying between winning the next 2 games, getting Cormac on track, and playing the bench more?
Yeah. Continue to build depth.
Okay.
And if you want to throw in something else there that I'm missing, but I think those are 3 relevant things that need to be accomplished over the next 2 weeks. Well, week, I guess.
I'll follow. I'm going to say get Cormac Ryan going. The reason I'm going to say that is because when you look at that UConn game, I believe he was 0 for 6 from 3. But that was a game where RJ Davis had 20 plus, Harrison Ingram had 20 plus, and Armando actually struggled from the field. So he was kind of battling down low with the bigs that they had. So if Cormac Ryan is spacing the floor in that situation, I'm not saying they win whatever, but throughout the course of a game, if you have that outside option that keeps the defense honest, so they have to play up on you, maybe that helps Armando down low. And also, if he's making the shots, to get more points. So I think I would say getting Cormac Ryan going is the most important thing. I do think it is interesting when you just look at his 3-point percentage, and I think we actually touched on it either earlier here or maybe it was I don't even remember. But when you look at the 3-point percentage he had at Notre Dame, he wasn't Klay Thompson. Like it wasn't like he was 40% every year. I think his career high was like 41, but he came into UNC about 35, 36. So it wasn't a Fletcher McGee. Let's use a college example, right? So it wasn't necessarily that, but you did bring him in to shoot. Like you did bring him in to kind of space the floor a little bit. And I think before the injury too, he was able to at least kind of pump fake and drive on occasion. Like, we saw him do that. Even against UConn, we saw him he had a couple of really nice, him and Armando had a couple of really nice give and go situations. So I think if he's able to start knocking down the three, that adds another element. And I think everything that Simon brought up obviously is important. So I'm interested to see where you guys kind of go with it. But I'm going to say Cormac Ryan being able, he's averaging 10 points per game without really making the three. So if he can bring that average up to about 13, 14 just by making some shots, I think that goes a long way. And I think that actually raises the ceiling, so to speak, for what the UNC offense can do.
Absolutely. For the record, Cormac Ryan shooting 25.5% from three-point range for Carolina this year, 32.9.
Career low in field goal percentage and three-point percentage. Career low so far.
Evan, you're going last, by the way. Adam, you got two more choices. Win two, or play the depth. What's second on the list?
Oh, Evan, I'm so sorry. I didn't. I thought
man.
for sure I would be last since I've been running my mouth nonstop. Oh, Evan. Oh, well. You got a little seniority going on here, I guess.
We got to build the depth. The depth has got to come in at the end and show that they can perform.
Evan
whether
had 2 exams today, and
whether you're up or down.
He's in Christmas break mode now. He's going to be going home to Mama and Daddy's house.
I'm in the childhood bedroom right now.
Look at that.
It's actually my dad's office.
Shout out to Fuquay, man.
Yeah, down in Fuquay.
Yeah, it does look like you have some nice furniture back there. Yeah.
Yeah, Evan and I are doing the post-game Kentucky show. Everybody's got Christmas parties and all. And,
That's great.
That's right. That's my magnet board in the background. I don't know if you guys can see it. I've got like 100+ magnets. I collect them.
You need to bring that closer.
It's another day. Another day. Adam's turn.
Adam, go. Winning or depth?
I'm going to win the 2 games. Shout out to Jeremiah for giving me a softball there. I appreciate you jumping on that grenade, Jeremiah. Win the games. Not only you play to win the game, as Herm Edwards said, but hey, Kentucky and UNC. I have one of my best friends in the world. He probably still does. When we were in high school, he used to pull against Kentucky to lose, just because Kentucky and UNC were in that all-time wins race all the time. He just pulled against Kentucky all the time because he wanted UNC to be number 1 in all-time wins. But yeah, several people have said it over here in the chat, and I think they're spot on. You get these 2 wins, I think the non-conference resume is pretty nice. In hindsight, you would have loved to get that Villanova game. There it is. Yeah, right. You don't have to hear the word quad. Hey, we were talking about it with Hubert today. What is it? Villanova, Arkansas, Tennessee, FSU, UConn, Kentucky, Oklahoma. That's 7 games. It's a hell of a 7-game stretch. My God. So if you could come out of that stretch, 5-2, I think it's pretty impressive. And you'd have wins over the SEC, the Big 12. Neutral court wins are valued. And all this, Ken Palm, the net, everything. I just think it would be huge. And then you're getting into ACC play, which, oh, by the way, they got 3 straight road games to start the ACC. Mm-hmm. All due respect to Charleston Southern, at Pitt, at Clemson, at NC State. This is going to be from now to mid to late January. There are going to be a lot of resume opportunities for UNC. Not to say that February is not going to be important, or March, but you win the games. And hey, the 2 blue bloods, Carolina and Kentucky, the last time they played in Vegas, Kentucky ran them out of the gym. It was a CBS Sports Classic a couple of years ago, impacted by COVID, when UCLA and Ohio State didn't even show up. UNC and Kentucky showed up. That was it. UNC wore the black jerseys. I'm sure people remember. But yeah, win the games. Oklahoma's good too, by the way. I think, I personally am super excited to cover UNC, Kentucky, and Atlanta, just like Jeremiah got to do Carolina, UConn, and Madison Square Garden. Just awesome. What a scene. I think it's going to be, Big Blue Nation's going to be out in full force in Atlanta this weekend. So I'm super looking forward to it. But yeah, win the games, stockpile the quad 1 wins, because these things I don't think is going to change by the time we get to March. I think a game against Kentucky on a neutral court, a game against Oklahoma on a neutral court, just like a game against Tennessee. I think Tennessee's going to stay up there, and UConn's going to stay up there. I think those things aren't going anywhere. So win the games is what I would say.
Oklahoma's 15 in the net right now. And
the computers love Oklahoma.
And they play in the Big 12. And if that means anything, that means their net's not going to go down much.
No,
so
not at all.
If you beat Oklahoma, that'll most likely, I would be shocked if that's not a quad 1 win by March.
No, it's going to be a quad 1 win. Absolutely. The computers love Oklahoma. And interesting, if you're on Ken Palm all the time like I am, interestingly enough, Ken Palm calls that game against Oklahoma semi-home for UNC. Yeah. I'm not sure what his criteria is for that. It will be a neutral court win as the NCAA tournament looks at it. But, the computers love Oklahoma.
All right, Evan, wrap us up. You get left with build depth because
Evan especially.
I think winning the games – I'm not getting in this debate, but I think winning the games is ultimately important. I think Cormac Ryan becoming a player and hitting shots and getting back on track for this team can make not winning both games irrelevant because they'll win a ton with him down the road. I think they're going to have him. But anyway, Evan, you got depth. Why is it important for Carolina to get back to playing this bench over these next 2-3 games?
Yeah, I appreciate you guys leaving me the best one, in my opinion. That was what I thought when I first heard those three.
Evan wrote about this, by the way, guys. Like he had a good Hubert live about the with Hubert insisting.
But no, I think long term, the bench is something that is going to have to become a factor. I think if we saw anything from that tournament run in 21, it's pretty hard to win a national championship with 5.5 players. And I'm not saying that I think this team is going to win a national championship, but if that's the ultimate goal, they are going to have to fortify I think a 7, maybe 8-man rotation would be best. Mm-hmm. I think right now they probably have a 6. I think you're confident in Seth Trimble. I think Jalen Withers is a guy that should be in the rotation. I think it's more of him kind of accepting his new role. I mean, people have to remember he was on a 4-win Louisville team last year. So there's probably an adjustment that he's going through right now to what his role is with this team. And I think once he kind of embraces that role as being an athletic kind of guy, a weak side shot blocker, and maybe not necessarily a scoring option, I think he can definitely be a factor. And then I think you can find minutes depending on matchup where Jalen Washington can be effective in alleviating some time for Armando. But yeah, I think long term, this is a team that if it wants to achieve its goals that it's set out, it's going to have to get back to playing its bench. I don't know if it's something that you're going to find out in these next 2 games. I know I'm kind of contradicting my argument right now, but I do think it's something you're going to figure out in the next couple weeks because there are going to be games and opportunities where you would expect UNC to have a sizable lead to get those bench guys in. And if you're not seeing them get minutes during those kinds of scenarios, or if you are seeing them get minutes and not perform during those scenarios, that could be a little alarming in terms of what this bench might look like kind of toward the home stretch at the end of the year. But yeah, I'll say long-term, this team is going to need some bench guys. Bench guys play a huge role in March. I'm sure everyone remembers Remy Martin. He was pretty important for Kansas in that game, and he came off the bench. So long-term goals, if this team wants to achieve its ultimate goal, they're going to have to probably get a 7 or 8-man rotation, which they don't have right now.
Hey, that's why we do it. 3 well-reasoned, rational thoughts. I think they're all important. I think winning is important. I think Cormac Ryan's got to be good. I think the depth's got to be good. To your point, Evan, about the depth, if they had another guy in 22 in that Final Four, if they had one more big in that 22 Final Four, they win the national championship. And it's a process that starts now for this team. You can't shrink the bench to 5.5 players. It's going to be interesting to see. I thought Hubert's quotes about you're either going to rebound and play defense or you're not going to play. And virtually said that to when y'all had him today, I guess it was. Mm-hmm. He's got to hold up to that. He mentioned accountability. He's got to hold them to that. And I don't know how much accountability we've seen over the last couple of years with guys not doing that. And a lot of people are talking about Jalen Withers. Jalen Withers has got to get it together. I mean, granted, it's tough to come in and get 2 or 3 minutes at a time and get in the flow, but you got to come out ready to ball. And for him and Jalen Washington and all those guys, I do think Seth Trimble plays a huge role in the next 2 games for this team. Kentucky's big. Kentucky's got a new big that's back out there. I don't know how much Baycott will do. It'll be interesting to watch that battle, but I think for Carolina to win against Kentucky and Oklahoma, they got to get it from across the board and not just one or two guys. Interesting discussion. Anything left? We'll do one before Christmas, but anything left, guys? Everybody's safe. Everybody's going to Atlanta to cover the game. Evan and I are post Kentucky here on the YouTube page. Any last thoughts before we get out of here? We're overdue again. Adam, short thought. Give me one penny. Really short.
Happy holidays.
Jeremiah.
Oh shoot. Yeah. I guess my closing thought. Certainly looking forward to being in Atlanta. I'm getting about tired of the RDU, but it is what it is, man. I think we got a really good one on our hands. I think it's gonna be a track meet, high 80s, low 90s probably.
Y'all need to take the Adam Mobile and drive it. That's a fun drive to Atlanta when it's traffic.
Oh, I've done it a million times.
It is.
I've already used the way to go, Jeremiah, on this one. Trust me.
Nah, you're right. You're right. I hear you.
Atlanta traffic is no joke. Evan, give me one penny before we get out of here.
I'd say up to this point, UNC basketball, in my opinion, is ahead of schedule. And I think by the new year, we'll figure out just how far ahead schedule they are.
Nice. Dean's List, Evan. Will we see your name in the local?
Got the Dean's List. Got the Dean's List. 6th straight semester.
Wow. Good God.
Good God, man. I
That was
hate
that
people
hard.
like you. I couldn't.
Where did we find him?
No, really. Does all this and makes Dean's List. Yeah. That's pretty impressive, young man.
Good.
All right.
God, yeah.
We are getting out of here. It's been On the Beat, sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt and Congruity HR. Adam, Jeremiah, Evan, always killing it on the beat. Evan and I will be post-Kentucky, I guess, 7:30, 8 o'clock Eastern on Saturday afternoon. Remember, stay here if you're listening on the audio version. Ben Roberts with the Herald Leader talking Kentucky, Carolina basketball along with Greg Barnes. As always, stay to Inside Carolina for all the latest about everything North Carolina. Thanks, guys.